Hello, everybody. We are here with our guest, Chinemerem. Hey, Chinies, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Good,
Thank you. Thank
good.
you for having me. I'm happy
Oh,
to.
of course. Thank you for coming. Chinies also has his own podcast, but we're going to get to that. I want him to give an intro of himself because only he can do it as perfectly as better than I can, rather. I've known Chinies for 10 years. It's a very long time. More than 10 years, I think. More than
It's
10
more than 10 years at this
More
point.
than 10
Yeah,
years,
like
yeah.
12.
Yes, yes, we were very, very young. And I've always looked up to you. I don't know if I've ever told you this too. I've always thought you were so smart and you've always handled yourself so well. So when I found out that we were
Thank
both
you.
on this like pre-med journey, I was like, I need to have you here to talk about how you are currently in your process, how you're applying to med school. We'll get into all of that. Firstly, how are you? How are you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So, like, firstly, you're very kind. I didn't even know any of that. Like, that you admire me and everything. So, thank you. So my name is Chinemerem. Like Norma said, my nickname is Chinese. So that's why she's calling me Chinese. Right now, I am a research coordinator at the Massachusetts General Hospital, so in the cardiology division of that hospital. And I graduated in 2020 with a BS in biology. And I'm trying to go to med school as well. I will be applying in this next cycle. So that's May, like this 2022 2023 cycle. And definitely looking forward to it. It's definitely going to be an experience, and I can't wait to get started.
Yeah, we're rooting for you, of course.
Like,
I guess the biggest thing, the first thing that I usually ask everyone is why medicine, especially why MD, why this MD path?
so it's funny. Like, I think starting off, like, this started obviously when I was a lot younger. Funny enough, I actually enjoyed really going to the. I really enjoyed going to the hospital, which is weird. Like, I not like I liked falling sick, like the feeling of being sick. Yeah, not like I like being sick, but then I liked falling sick just so I could go to the hospital. So if I fell sick and I didn't go to the hospital, it wasn't as nice. But if I went to the hospital, then it was great. And I like going to the hospital especially because I felt like a sense of security there. I felt this assurance that if I'm coming here because I'm sick, then when I'm leaving, that I'm going to feel better somehow because there would be like hope of being better after. And so I looked up to physicians because I saw them as those people who basically gave me that hope that I was going to get better. Um, and over time, and funny enough, I think for a lot of young black men. Even in Nigeria, like I think Ben Carson was an influence early on. So like I read a few of his books and I was like, so I could actually do this. This person that I saw, like the doctors that I went to in the hospital, coupled with this, I'm like, I can actually do this. And so I figured that at that point, that's when the idea started to form. And then just throughout my life, different experiences, growing up in Nigeria, and also seeing that a lot can be done to care for people better and to deliver healthcare better. That kind of refined it. And then also through experiences in college, I think especially, so I worked as a hospice volunteer in college, and what that did for me is it kind of redefined medicine for me, and helped me see the times where sometimes medicine does fail. Sometimes people don't always get better, and that helped me see that there's also another dimension to medicine, like the side that is more you know caring for people even in their most vulnerable state, even if there's nothing you can do, just being the voice of hope, or being like their only real sunlight, or like their very dark days while in those conditions. So I think that helped me kind of see medicine in a more, I would say, mature light, because growing up I was like I can save everybody, but like that's not always the case. So I think that's what that did for me, and I'm going into medicine, just because I hope to be that real sunlight for people and
Yeah,
the
and I love
really
that you
good
said that
experience.
ray of sunlight because that's definitely something that I emulate. I want to emulate as well in my path. And like you said, when we're younger, we think we can heal everybody, but then you come to
Yeah.
the realization that I can be intentional and purposeful in one path and just make as big of an impact in this field. So now you have this idea, you have this dream. Let's talk about concrete things and you actualizing this plan that you have. Dreams are wonderful, but actions are even better. So now you walking in this path. I'm sure it's already been a journey for you as a pre med student. So what are some things that you did MCAT wise, preparing your personal statement, getting those letter of recommendations. How was that process for you?
So it was definitely, it wasn't easy. It's a long process. It's actually, if you're counting undergrad, it's like a 4 year process. The process of, you know, going to class and actually trying to learn the things that are eventually going to show up on the MCATs. Building relationships with professors so as to get like good recommendations. Um, I think a big part, like if there's any parts of this that's like crucial, I think it's planning. So I think knowing early on that I wanted to go to med school helped because it kind of helped me chart out like my path to that point. And another thing, of course, is like discipline. I'm sure we might talk about this a bit more later, but like discipline and deciding, okay, what do I want to do? And then being able to turn down the noise, in the background. Because me personally, this was a challenge, especially for me, because a lot of my friends weren't pre med, so it's like they're like engineers, and their realities are like very different. And so being able to decide that, okay, I know that tech is very enticing, engineering can be very enticing. That like straight to straight to my career, like just going out of college straight into that career, like it was very enticing, but also like realizing that, okay, the hope that I had as a child and carrying that over to college and letting that manifest there. I think that definitely helped with the discipline side of it. And so far, it's been difficult. I think definitely something that's very helpful is, okay, so I mentioned planning. Another thing is like having a group of friends who are pre-meds, right? And I say this as someone actually who didn't have a lot of pre-med friends, so I know how essential it would be. So I took a lot of my core pre-med classes on my own. So like going to class, studying on my own, no study groups or whatnot. And I think it would have been a lot more enjoyable if I had people you know, um, who were pre-meds as well. And obviously, there's a caveat to that in the sense that I think too many pre-meds can be bad because I think, in my experience, pre-meds can be like ultra competitive. And I think being in an environment where, everyone's so competitive, it could, dampen your spirits. So I think obviously having maybe one or two or three friends who are like pre-med to like pick you up on those days when things get hard, and just motivate you. I think doing things with people, with like a group of people, obviously makes the journey a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable.
I agree with everything you're saying. That's definitely something I wish I did differently in undergrad. So I was an engineer. My major, I was a biomedical engineer. So a big percent of the people in my circle are engineers.
Yeah,
And I had maybe, I can count the number of people on my fingers that were pre-med like me, but they were in a completely different major. And we would only hang out in like social settings and then study together maybe once or twice. So I almost
yeah,
felt like similar to like isolated. And now even like as 20s is such an interesting time because there's so many people who are launched into their life who have stable jobs and stable income
yeah.
or even doing things that we're like
I see. Yeah,
we're still very much studying every day or in the books or applying to things or just trying to
applying
be,
to things.
yeah, we're still even building ourselves financially now.
Yeah,
um the word that I always think of is like it's like delayed gratification, which
yeah.
can be hard when people are blossoming in a space that you want to be in right now. So yeah, it can definitely be tough. That's so the friends thing. I wish I definitely did that. More people to hold me accountable, and also to just be on that path with me as well. And I think that's a good segue to like sacrifice. The delayed gratification thing is also a big thing. How do you deal with the sacrifices you've already made as a pre-med student? You're still at the earlier stages of your journey as a physician, and so there's definitely a lot more sacrifice on the way. Missing out on things which can never be easy. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. which which cannot be easy. So like why would you want to be in a space where there's sacrifice that you've already had to commit to and that you're already going to commit to in the future?
All right. So first off, I just want to say for anyone listening that I don't think it's possible to do anything of consequence without ever like having this feeling of, am I doing this right? Am I like on the right path? Because I think when you're doing something that you've never done before, and if you are coming from a place where people in your family or something haven't like done the thing that you're doing before, it's very easy to question the path you're on and to wonder if the difficulty you're experience um is a sign of things not going to work out in the end. And I think that feeling is natural. That's just why I want to say that it's natural, and it's how you deal with that feeling that matters. And for me personally, I have definitely had my own fair share of doubts about this. Like when I was studying for the MCAT and I'm not leaving the house, I'm like on Saturday when everybody's having fun, like I'm taking like 8-hour exams, like that sort of thing, or like Sunday, same thing. Um, Definitely those times were times where I was like, I could go and learn how to code. You know, I could actually. It's not too late to. It's not too late to learn how to.
Not too late.
It's not too late to learn Python. So it's like there were times like that, but I think what really helped me is firstly having people around me who've been there, from like the starts. So like what you'd call day ones. Of course my family, but also friends that I went to high school with. Like having people that can remind me, okay, but this was you then. I heard you talking about this then, and you sounded so passionate. So like, and they caused me to look deeper as to why I felt the way I felt in those different moments. And calling me back exactly to, so okay, where did it start? Like, what's the reason? And I think all going off of that is, somebody told me this, like a friend of mine I was talking to told me this, like you have to have like a north star, like on the compass is like if you veer off direction slightly, it's always going to lead you pointing back to the north, right? So I think if you have your north, your true north, like is like I want to be this, I want to live my life this way. This is what I want to do. I think definitely if there's any point where you're veered off track slightly, I think you always come back. And obviously doing that on your own is never possible. That's why going back to my first point, having people is such a huge thing. And another thing even is like social media. I think seeing doctors, people who've like progressed, and that's why I think what you're doing right now is really great because I think seeing people who are like farther along in the journey, who are like living testaments of things that you want to be. I think seeing those people also adds some validity to like what you feel, but to also like some validity to the journey that you're on because you're like I see these people, they're having like they're having like it seems like they're having great lives, and they're having like impacts on like levels that I want to have impact on, and it's like they're doing all these things after sacrificing. I think that makes you feel like the sacrifice will be worth it in the end. So I think all these things just come together to, and they've helped me so far to at least last this long. And I, by God's grace, I'm able to see it to the end. Yeah.
Amen. Amen. And like I said earlier, I keep saying we're all rooting for you. Me personally, I'm rooting for you.
Thank you.
So
I'm
yes,
rooting for you too.
oh, thank you. We've talked
Definitely.
about, thank you. Oh, thanks so much. We talked about your path. We talked about things that you wish you had done differently, things you're currently doing right now. Another thing you're currently doing right now, in addition to applying and everything like that, is you've also created a podcast called Where the Health Are We? You and your friend Brian Fletcher have co-produced this podcast to share information, tips, and the history of the healthcare of Africa with a lot of insightful interviews with some really powerful people. Recently, you spoke with Dr. Kasia about a initiative in Malawi. I would love for you to talk about it and tell us also why you decided to start this podcast and what your hope is for the future with regards to building this podcast.
Yeah. So Dr. Kasia is the country director for a nonprofit called Village Reach in Malawi. And we interviewed him because we wanted to talk about public-private partnerships and how that's factoring into the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines. And what Village Reach does in Malawi is, I think, very powerful because they try to build healthcare systems from the ground up. So they empower healthcare workers, and they also strengthen supply chains. So trying to get vaccines from overseas where they come from to the people in rural settings. And they've done this in different ways. If you want to hear more about that, check the episode on all platforms.
Yes.
Um, but the podcast really came from out of a place of curiosity. I think I've always wanted to learn more, but I just didn't know how to go about it. And at the same time, I started to get into podcasts and I realized how easy podcasts are to listen to, how digestible the content is. and how much of it basically gives me to explore more things that I learn. And so I figured, I have the time now, so I might as well do this. And even on a larger level, on like a grander level, I think solutions to the problems that we experience in life and just as a world, as a society, they come when we understand the issues. And I think Africa has for a very long time been this dark place where you don't, like, this very nebulous space where you don't really know what's happening. You don't really understand how things are or why they are the way they are. You just know that they're bad, but you don't understand how they're bad or why they're bad. And so I figured that I think starting a podcast where you're talking to the people who are on the ground, who have dedicated like days of their lives to different endeavors on the continent or to research. I realized that speaking to the people will probably be a way to illuminate healthcare in Africa and like shed more light and help people to understand it. And the aim ultimately is to, from understanding, I hope that translates into action. I know that in our world today, I think healthcare is usually, when it comes to innovation, healthcare is usually like lags behind, which is surprising because it's something that affects all of us. So I'm trying to see if there's a way that we can inspire more people to devote time and devote effort and energy into innovating in healthcare and finding ways to solve the healthcare issues that African countries face. So that's the overarching idea of the podcast, essentially. Yeah.
That was great. The podcast is definitely booming. It's super insightful, and there's definitely a lot of interesting tidbits there. Are there any episodes that you can share with us that are coming out in the future? Any exclusives that you can only hear at this podcast? Anything we should look forward to?
I'd say look forward to more written content, so like, coming as like newsletters. I think I think podcasts are definitely great, but then I think having something to write would give me a chance to look into certain things more extensively, that I would be able to do on like an episode. And also it would make it, there are people who prefer to read than to, listen to stuff. So, I think that would be another way to cater to those people. Um, but that's all I'll say for now. There's other stuff, and I think you just have to
Watch this
stay
space.
tuned to find out.
No problem. So you heard it here first. That was an exclusive, okay? Only available on this podcast, okay? Yes, that's awesome, Shanice. The last thing I want to ask you is, what is one thing that you're looking forward to in your next chapter of your physician journey? I'm sure definitely getting into med school is a big thing, but like, what are you looking forward to? What dreams do you have that you're comfortable sharing with us? What is something that you're excited to enjoy in this next chapter of your career as a physician or going to MD school?
So going into med school, I think one big thing for me is being around like-minded people, right? I think especially during this pandemic, I spent a lot of time on my own, and it's given me a lot of time to reflect on the kind of person that I am and the kind of spaces that I would like to thrive in and I can thrive in, and the kind of spaces that I can also contribute to. And I think honestly, being in med school is unique because you're around people who are there for like like the focus is pretty singular. Like everybody is there to um, learn this art of service, so to say, and everybody's there to learn how to make an impact on like a broader scale by God's grace. And so being in that setting, I think all it does is inspire you to dream, to inspire you to go out of your comfort zone and do things that are more challenging, and at the same time inspire other people to do the same. I think of, like, we went to Loyola, and I think Loyola was like was it like, in terms of like academic rigor, like it was pretty rigorous, and I think also being around people in Loyola who were like super driven, I think what that did for me is that it's inspired me to like, to not like settle for less. We called it magis, going for the magis and all those.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, going for the magis. So going for the more. I think being around people who are like-minded in that way does the same thing. And being in med school does that. So I'm definitely looking forward to meeting people who are on the same journey and carrying on this journey with
Mhm.
with them.
Awesome, Chinemerem. for the last time. I will say it over and again, but we are so excited to see you grow, to see you succeed, to see you get into medical school, to see you become an MD, all of that. Um,
Thank you.
my last question, I promise this is the last one, is what is a piece of advice, a piece of a gem that you want to share with a high school student, a middle school student, or a undergrad student who is thinking about becoming an MD, but is having trouble deciphering if this is really the path that they want to commit to. Someone maybe struggling with their MCAT, someone who is struggling with low grade in high school or in undergrad. What is a piece of advice that you'd like to share with them?
Um, so funny enough, like I think this is a good question because I grew up being afraid of failing, right? And what this did to me is I didn't do things that I wanted to do simply because I knew that there was always the off chance that I would fail, right? And what this did for me is I ended up like at different points I've regretted certain things because I'm like because of that fear of failure, because of not doing things because of that fear of failure. And even on this path, I think there were points where, for instance, when I was studying for the MCATs and preparing for the MCAT, when I was like, I'm not sure if I want to do this anymore, and it was simply because there was a chance of me not doing well on the MCATs. And so, if that's you, I would say honestly, don't be afraid of failing. I think honestly, I think growth really comes from embracing that we're not perfect at anything. I think that takes a huge weight off of you. And especially on this, like I mentioned earlier, if you're doing anything of consequence, like there is always that risk of you failing. Like if you're doing something important, if you're doing something groundbreaking, if you're doing something unconventional by whatever standard, um, there's always a chance of failing. So I think firstly, just embrace that. And then find a community that can remind you that, it's okay to be imperfect. And even when you're imperfect, all that really matters is, okay, what do I do next? As opposed to my current situation. So that's all I'll say. Like, it's okay to be imperfect, just try not to sink into that feeling, of sadness that comes from being imperfect and just work on, growth. 1% every day. That's what they say. 1% every day. So that's that's it for me.
As a perfectionist who struggles with accepting failure, I really, really feel
Yeah.
that. That really, you were speaking to me. That really spoke volumes to me. Imperfection is something that, especially when, like I said, if you're a perfectionist and you really want to release perfect things, or you want every iteration of what you do to be
Be perfect.
perfect, when you send something to failure, it's enough to deflect you from your path entirely. Um, so I think you saying that is really inspirational to me, and I'm definitely sure it's going to resonate with the people that are watching this as
Yeah.
well. Um, yes. So thank you, Chinemerem. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for dropping your gems, your knowledge, sharing an exclusive about your podcast. Stay up for newsletters from Where the Health Are We?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. His podcast is available on Spotify and other streaming services as well. Thank you, Janice, for being here. Have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you another
All right.
time.
You too.